Story today, India is in the middle of its most ambitious infrastructure expansion yet. Expressways, smart cities and next-gen railway corridors. The government betting big on infra to drive economic growth. Now, the National Infrastructure Pipeline, it envisions projects worth about 111 lakh crore rupees. Initiatives like the Gati Shakti plan. India is aiming essentially to streamline execution and remove bottlenecks when it comes to building infrastructure around the entire country. But the big question we're looking at today, can India keep up with its own pace?
So there are financing hurdles. They continue to pose a great challenge. Urban centers are struggling with overpopulation while rural connectivity gaps persist. At the same time, private sector involvement is growing with public-private partnership, the PPP models, fueling investments in highways. Metro projects, logistical parks, global investors are eyeing India's infrastructure boom, but execution remains a challenge, and risks around sustainability also, concerns there are lurking. With India's cities expanding at an unprecedented rate in our infrastructure growth story, can we really make it sustainable and also keep up with it? That's the question we're asking on the program today.
All right, so joining us to give us the analysis, what it is that experts are saying and what the numbers show, we have with us Kushal Kumar Singh. He's a partner at Deloitte India and he specializes in particular in India's infrastructural landscape. So let's go over to him to understand more. Mr. Singh, good morning. Thank you for joining us here on the show. Can you tell us first, opening question, lay down for us the groundwork. So tell us, when you look at the sector, when you see the boom that's taking place right now, what for you are the exciting parts of it and what are the possible red flags?
Good morning, Toya. Good morning, Sonal. Pleasure to be here with you. You have started with a big bang. Actually, this is a question that we keep on asking ourselves and we keep on deliberating between the clients that we work with. I'll break it into a couple of smaller parts. Are we doing enough? Probably not. Are we trying to sustain it? We are putting a lot of pressure to improve our pace of construction and development. Are we able to do it? Probably we are lurking slightly behind than what we expect to be doing it. Certain small examples and numbers. While last year the government said that they will be spending around 11 lakh crores in the capital expenditure, we ended up doing slightly lesser than that. So somewhere there is a stagnation in the demand for capex or our ability to make that expenditure, and maybe going forward that is what we'll be focusing upon. And when I'm using the word we, I'm using it collectively for the government and the citizens as such.
Right. But infrastructure is a very wide subject, Mr. Singh. We do know that our capability on, say, constructing roads is phenomenal. We've improved over the years. But some of the others is where we lag behind. Could you break it up for us a little bit?
Actually, it's for roads because we use them quite often and every citizen uses it quite often. It comes to the forefront, quite regularly. But other infrastructure, also the pace of development is not that slow. There are environmental concerns that needs to be looked at. There are technological challenges that needs to be taken care of. Then India is a diverse country. A technology that works well in Himachal Pradesh may not work well in, let's say, Tamil Nadu. And therefore, bringing in various technologies, bringing in various facets of the socio-cultural realities takes time. And we are not autocratic government. We are a democratic government, and therefore we have to look at what the citizens are also, asking for. And therefore, giving the answer in a one line. It's not only highways, all other sectors are doing quite well. It is just that probably our Honorable Prime Minister and the Finance Minister are far more over-ambitious in the pace of growth than our people who are down below implementing it. But most probably, given the pace and the change in attitude we have been seeing over the last 5 years or so, we believe that, maybe next year we'll be able to achieve the target, so maybe even surpass them.
Okay.
Okay. So, can we now come and just talk a little bit about the funding side of all of this for a second? I want to ask you a little bit about private investment and the role that it plays in this larger picture. So, Kushalji, it seems like there are two ways of thinking about this. Some experts believe that when you look at India, there's a much larger role that private companies should be playing. They're not playing a large enough role, that they should actually be doing the maintenance of structures for years and years instead of making it the public that does that. But then there's a different set of experts that actually believe that when you do that, infrastructure becomes expensive. Whether it is the prices you charge on, common public for parking fees, toll fares, all of that becomes expensive the moment you have private players involved. What is your perspective on this?
Let's go back a couple of decades when the government decided that government will reduce its inclusion or its work in the business and they will more do governance. And that is where public-private partnership comes into play. Yes, when you bring in the private sector, the cost of service will increase, but the quality of service will increase dramatically. Let's take the case of a highway. We have all seen the quality of highways prior to the advent of public-private partnerships. And now we are seeing the quality of highways. There is obviously a significant difference. In fact, the pricing of the service on highways is also done scientifically. You just don't decide that this is the toll that we will be charging. There was a detailed study done way back by a renowned traffic analyst called Mr. Kadiali, who actually calculated the vehicle operating cost savings when you improve the quality of road. And what the government did was, government said that we will charge only 40% of the savings. So 60% was given back to the users of the highway. And that is usually the mechanism through which infrastructures are priced. There are some sectors where it is done on a cost plus basis like airports. But there again, there are regulators who decide what is the reasonable cost. You just don't gold plate an airport and then start charging for it. But the quality of asset improves significantly. Let's take the case of the Delhi-Gurgaon Expressway. It's been nearly 18 or 19 years this road has been in existence, and at least I haven't seen significant potholes on the road, which just tells us the quality of the highway that was built at that point in time. Wherein we have all seen what happens when a PWD makes a road and then, PWD itself has to maintain it over a period of 5 or 10 years. So while people are paying for the infrastructure, they are also getting the benefit of much higher quality infrastructure. We have seen it. There were resistance in the past about paying for the service for infrastructure, but now there is a growing acceptance that is coming for that. And now, in fact, we have seen number of cases where the local citizens are demanding, why don't you do a PPP for this infrastructure asset in our area so that at least we get an infrastructure asset.
Right, Mr. Singh, although there are examples on the other end as well, the crashing roof of an airport, highways, flyovers coming crashing down, there are enough instances that also sort of pop the question on if our pace of building is really catching up with quality as well. Just answer that, but also, give me an understanding of what exactly do the private players really get to gain from this, because infrastructure projects, there is a long gestation period. There are huge amount of risks involved. You have to go through the red tape of the government. So are there some innovative sort of mechanisms which the private players can keep in mind?
So let me start with the answer to the second part and then I'll go to the first part. Look, private sector is mostly for profit element. Now, when we are allowing charging for the services that is being provided, and if the charging is giving them a return over a long-term period, then the private sector is interested. They have two revenue streams. One is when they construct, during the construction itself, they generate some profits because of the construction contracts. And then when they are charging the service of that asset over a period of long term, they also get revenues from it. So there is a profit element, and no private sector will come if there is no profit element in that. Then we are talking about CSR and philanthropy, which is probably not the best way of developing infrastructure of any country, and especially a country like ours. There are innovative financial mechanisms. There are, like, for example, there's something called a takeout financing, wherein because of the asset liability mismatch, the banks are not able to lend for more than 15 years. But what if you have a mechanism where you can extend the tenure of loans to 20-25 years through the takeout financing? The 5 into 5 into 5 25 years mechanism is also available through RBI. Then we are also talking about bullet repayments, bonds, InvITs. So there are a lot of infrastructure mechanisms that are available.
Okay.
Banks have become very comfortable with public-private partnerships because they have seen over the last 20-30 years that the government is there to support these kind of assets. In terms of construction methodology and terminologies, the government has shown its inclination to be very adaptive. In fact, in highways, there is a underlying circular which says that if something has been done across the globe and it has been adopted by any government entity across the globe, show it to us and we'll adopt it here, provided it meets our minimum requirements. And therefore, a lot of flexibility has been given to the private sector to come and adopt any new technology they want. Obviously, there are risk elements, as you rightly mentioned. There are reports about some highways or some flyovers getting crashed or some roofs getting collapsed. But these are one in or a far few number of examples. And if you look at the entire spectrum, then probably the other side will have far more failures. When you are doing something, there would be nothing can be 100% accurate. When you are doing a large number of projects in PPPs, there would be one or two black sheeps always present there.
Sure.
So, does it answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
It does, but every time those videos go viral, one does see the comments, and the comments are sometimes, quite netizens rather often ask, why in India? Why do we see this happen? Let me ask you then a slightly different question. Again, something that goes viral on the internet sometimes is you'll see videos and visuals of China smart cities. I'm not talking about Beijing, I'm talking about, smart cities like Shenzhen, for example, where you'll have upside down, what it seems like are upside down monorails, trains. And Indian, again, net citizens going, when is India going to look like this? Is that a silly question to ask, Kushalji? Will India, is that not the parameter India should be evaluating itself by?
Yeah, we should not be evaluating ourselves on those parameters, because what is important is the need for having a good transportation solution. Now, whether that transportation solution is a bus or a BRT or a metro or an inverted monorail, it probably depends on the cost efficiency and the efficiency of transportation. If I can provide the same services through a bus rapid transport system, why should I need a inverted monorail which will cost probably 50 times more? Why would I need a white elephant in my backyard if I can do it with a normal bullock cart? So the parameter has to be the efficiency and cost, not the infrastructure or the cost of the infrastructure. It sometimes looks very good if we are looking at futuristic assets, but we should also look at the cost, especially in a country like ours where money is something that is scarce. How can we spread the availability of infrastructure vis-a-vis the cost that is to be incurred is something that all the planners always have in their mind. And when they take decisions on what is to be done, this is one of the key parameters to be taken care of.
Right, actually, when it comes to transport, there is like a separate discussion we should do on it. There is so many things that really comes to mind. But Mr. Singh, I want to ask you about the disparity and the mismatch in some of the infrastructural growth that we've seen in India. We've seen a massive growth in, say, tier 2, tier 3 cities. But again, sometimes a mismatch. For example, a Kanpur versus a Lucknow, a metro capital versus a city which is right close to it. See, an Allahabad or a Prayagraj compared to, again, a Lucknow. And this is just UP that I'm picking up examples. So many of them exist all across the country. What do you think can be done for an overall growth here to ensure that we are not looking fragmented in our approach?
Actually, when the planners decide, there are two ways of deciding it. One is, where do you spend government money, and those projects get developed through government grants and fundings. And second is public-private partnerships. Now, whenever we are looking at public-private partnerships, one of the key element of that, to take a decision is about the availability of that asset, the propensity of how much user fee you can charge, and what will be the user base of it, because a PPP projects become viable basis on the utilization. And therefore, sometimes we also are aware that there are asset requirements in a particular area, but then we also know that the utilization would be on a significantly lower side, and therefore the gestation period for profitability will be on a much longer period. So what we do is we do a prioritization study that, okay, fine, let's do these projects in these areas first when we are doing PPP projects, and then maybe in the phase 2 we will do the next stage, and then the phase 3 will go for other geographies. Parallelly, the government funding is spread evenly across, and in fact the government picks up saying that if there are areas which have lower utilization but the economic returns of creating a particular asset in that area is on a much higher side, the government does not look at the revenue yield of that asset. The government will just go and develop that asset there. So there are two parallel approaches going on. While we have started late, as we all know, our infrastructure boom is probably 50 years, slower compared to others. But maybe over a period of next decade or so, most part of the country will be at the same level when it comes to the availability of infrastructure.
Sure.
That's my firm belief.
Sure.
Kushal, I'm interested to know, you study infrastructure projects across the country and across the world. When it comes to right from conception to development to actually putting the final project out there, what are the aspects that Indians do right, that Indians do incredibly, that we do in a manner that stands out from the rest of the world?
So, PPP started in UK way back when it was called PFI, Private Finance Initiative, and in the region of Mrs. Margaret Thatcher. But even today, they don't do more than 10 or 15 PPPs in a year. Look at the number of PPPs India does. I don't know whether you are aware or not. We do more than 1,000 PPPs every year. And that is what is reported. Smaller PPPs are not even reported at the aggregate level. So that is the quantum of PPPs we do. We are the largest PPP market in the world. Everyone is looking at us. So what we have done is we have picked up concepts and we have, kind of commoditized them so that every sector can pick up one commodity or one PPP structure and develop it. So the number is huge. What we have done in the process is we have adopted an approach which says that one size fits all. And therefore, what may be working in an airport sector may not work for a sewage treatment plant, but we are still pushing it that way. Combined with that, the capacity of the people who are implementing it, especially in the government, there is a significant capacity gap, especially in the operations level. Senior people are very much aware about PPP structures, the models, the financing gaps and other aspects. But when it comes to people who are on ground, there are problems. Coming to other things that we are doing better, we have a large ecosystem now. The number of players who are involved in PPPs is significantly large. Our PPP industry is large. But given the size of the population, given the geographical spread we are doing it, we have still miles to go.
I see. Lastly, Mr. Singh, I want to understand, how do you think Indian government can incentivize private players for adopting greener, more environmental friendly ways of development? Are there certain initiatives that can be picked up, and especially in the wake of climate change, especially in the wake of the calamities that we've been hearing of?
There has been a lot of thrust on that. While till now there are requirements and they are happy to be's kind of thing, right? So most of the infrastructure projects have their requirements set out. All the infrastructure, all the environmental clearances and other things are to be done, and there are no escaping from that. But we are in the process of saying that yes, there are certain elements which can be included, which can make the project far more environmentally resilient. And those discussions are going on. The government as of now is nudging the private sector to adopt it. They have not mandated them, because yes, the reality is that by adopting more and more environmentally friendly policies, the cost of the infrastructure also goes up, which actually leads to the cost of the increase in the cost of service. So the government is aware about the impact that will happen. So right now they are nudging the private sector to adopt those things. I don't, or probably I believe that maybe another 2, 3, 4 years, those nudgings will become a mandate. because by that time we would all have understood the impact of global warming and how, why it is important to have environmentally resilient infrastructure. And by that time the market also would have developed to that level.
All right, that balancing act then, right, on how to ensure that it's green and also ensure that we catch up with the pace.
But it's good to know that strides have been made in that area. Kushalji, I think we're out of time on this entire story, but thank you for providing us with that entire context on the areas there is to grow when it comes to India's infra story, but also just teaching our audiences how to look a little deeper than all of the headlines. All right, we're going to be heading into a quick break on the other side.
All right, thank you, Mr. Singh, for